Cabinet meeting, slightly earlier than normal because we're accommodating a brought forward full council meeting this evening. It's obviously the last before we break up over the summer. It is a physical cabinet meeting which is taking place in Hackney Town Hall, and the meeting is being live streamed. Welcome to everyone that's watching on the live stream and the press and public in the room. If any members of the cabinet are joining remotely, just a reminder that you're not counted as being formally present, but I have logged into the meeting and I can see you if you want to take part in the meeting. As usual, decisions will be published after the meeting. I don't have any announcements because we've got a very heavy cabinet agenda and plenty of time for political notifications in full council, but I will acknowledge that it is Ian Williams' last cabinet meeting, but we will, the first of many tributes, Ian, I hope you're ready, we'll be making later. Do we have any apologies for absence? None received? No. Okay. We may read into the minutes during the course of the meeting further apologies if we need to. In terms of urgent items of business, I've not been notified of any that aren't including the agenda. In terms of declarations of interest, item 10 is a bundle of voluntary sector and community grants, but I also wanted to draw attention to colleagues that, as well as being the standard community grant paper, that we are also there's a few other things we're doing under that item, and I shall swiftly get to the right page and make my declaration. So if we look on page 149, we're approving a grant of the London Community Credit Union for £40,000 alongside neighbouring boroughs to support the credit union. It is on my declarations, but I'm a member of the credit union. It depends on how many other colleagues are members of the credit union, to whether just those that have accounts want to leave at that item, or whether we can take advice that it's something that lots of residents have and lots of members of the council. In terms of other items, I don't think I'm on the board of any of the organisations that are receiving grants, but I would just strongly urge colleagues to double check that and make the necessary declarations. I think Playbus is in there, Deputy Mayor Bramble, Councillor Jana Thomas. Are you referencing credit union? Yeah. You're a credit union, I'm a credit union, Councillor Kennedy's credit union, it's his in paper. What's your advice, monitoring officer?
My advice would be that once it's been declared, then members would be entitled to remain. We want the meeting to remain quorate. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much. So I'm going to remain after that. So if anything else comes from that, please do let us know as we move through the agenda. Item 4, notice of intention to conduct business in private. There is some exempt appendix linked to the OFP. As we get to it, we'll work out whether we need to move into exempt. In terms of questions and deputations under 5, no questions or deputations have been received from the public or other councillors. In terms of item 6, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 26th of June, are we happy to approve them? Is there an amendment? In my chair's notes, there's reference to an amendment. No. No? Okay, no amendment. Item 7, which is the minutes of the previous meeting of CPIC. You, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just there's one item on that we considered at this meeting, which is a very important item, and it was the letting of the contract for installation and maintenance of cycle hangers, which will enable my colleague Councillor Coburn over there to oversee the programme, to accelerate the programme and implement an extra 200 hangers by 2026, as promised in our manifesto.
There will be lots of people in this room and beyond excited about that news. Obviously, we signalled that some time ago, but it's great that we're now in contract, as you say, and able to deliver those new cycle hangers. And I think, like the EV chargers, it's something that will be rolling out from the autumn. I'm seeing nodding, so that's brilliant news. And we'll obviously be wanting to engage with communities as we do that work. Are we happy to note the unrestricted minutes? Fantastic. Back to you, Councillor Chapman, which is the OFP. It also includes some lease agreements, which, because we don't have a capital update this month, are not in the capital update and property report. So they're bundled up here with the OFP, but I'm sure you'll address that in your remarks. But clearly, Councillor Woodley and I are thrilled by this Springfield hydrotherapy pool. And I think, given the budget pressures, it's really positive, and just huge thank you to the council property team and finance team for the agreement of lease around 2 Hillman Street, which obviously underpins a substantial amount of income for the council. Over to you, Councillor Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the first thing to say in the OFP report is that, obviously the disappointing position we find ourselves in at the beginning of the year, where we are already overspent on the budget by about 10 million. Obviously it's a matter for concern, but it's no matter for panic. The officers will be taking action and reporting back to us on how we can keep that under control during the course of the year. But it is I think, an early example of the difficult financial pressures that the council still continues to face, partly through insufficient funding and partly through the pressures that are on us in meeting essentially social care and prevention of homelessness requirements. So it will obviously matter of interest for future reports. The report also contains 2 proposals to early proposals for budget savings for the next year's budget, essentially. But once agreed, one would hope we can implement them as soon as possible and hope help with savings this year. One relates to an increase in parking income, which is recognition of decisions already made. It's not a new proposal in here for anything on the ground, but a recognition of parking income that we can achieve. And the others is a series of efficiency measures in the estate service and a better, plans towards better manage that. Which will produce the saving set out in the report. And again, the sooner we get on with these things, the better in terms of both financial years. As you said, Chair, there is also 2 recommendations relating to property matters. One to acquire some property, which is in the confidential bit of the agenda, if we want to go into details for that. But I think, an important part of service with that. And also, as you said, to grant the lease for the Springfield Park facilities set out in the report. So I commend the report to the Cabinet and ask for agreement recommendations.
Thanks very much, Councillor Chapman. Obviously, putting on public record the thanks for the work on this, but also, as colleagues will be aware, any savings, any income from parking has to be spent on transport purposes. Yes. We want to put that on public record. You did also highlight the purchase of temporary accommodation. I am assuming colleagues are happy not to look at the exempt appendix or debate it later in the agenda, and that people have read it already, and then we're happy to take it as a bundle. I'm not seeing any divergence from that. So we're noting the overall financial position. We're agreeing to those proposed savings, and then the 3 property elements of the paper. Noted and agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item 9, which is the Equality Plan consultation draft, Councillor Williams. Before, obviously, Councillor Williams introduces the report, we may not get a chance to thank colleagues for the work that they did around Pride and recognise the staff Proud Network that joined us at the main London Pride Parade. And I think the focus on trans rights was very welcome. and something that I know has been a consistent stream of policy activity since we passed the motion here a couple of months ago. But the Equality Plan is obviously far wider than that. And over to you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be able to introduce this paper this evening. It brings together some really important areas of work that sit under all of our equalities work, and includes our overarching equalities action plan as well, framework, sorry. And we've been through some of the most challenging times that I've ever seen in my 20 years as a Hackney councillor. So this work will set out to help us achieve the best possible outcome for our residents who have been most affected by the cost of living crisis, for our Black and global majority residents and our LGBTQI residents. And thank you for paying tribute to those staff who helped to celebrate Pride, but also helped us with the trans motion earlier this year as well. Some really key areas of work that will be central to our equalities plan. There are some key groups that we'll be adding to the plan that you wouldn't have necessarily seen previously, including ex-armed forces, care experienced young people and care leavers, as well as refugees and migrants whose status makes them vulnerable. And later this evening, of course, we'll have a question from the public, as well as a motion on becoming a borough of sanctuary, underscoring the importance of this area of work. We will have a consultation plan that's going to focus on staff partners and residents who will be affected. And I'd like to take a moment to thank the staff who have been working on the plan. They've done an incredible piece of work, but during my time as Cabinet Lead for Equalities, they have given us a solid foundation on equalities and our anti-racism work as well, which I want to pay tribute to tonight. Without them, we would not be in the strong position that we are now. Over the years, they have really grappled with some of the most difficult aspects of inequalities and anti-racism, responding not only to the murder of George Floyd, but grounding our work, our anti-racism work, prior to that. So consolidating it and bringing it all together. So I really want to pay tribute to them this evening and get that on the record, because without them, we would be a much poorer borough and council without all the work that they have put into this.
Thank you, Councillor Williams, and echoing that deep thanks to the strategy and policy team and the work that they've been doing to lead this work across the council, and the implications both internally and externally, which I think is really, really important. We're going out to consultation though, aren't we? So it's not a final version here. Are we happy to agree the consultation draft and going out to consultation? Great, thank you very much indeed. Over to Councillor Kennedy and the voluntary sector grants programme updates and recommendations. I did just want to highlight Neil has permission to film us tonight. It's part of a broader piece of social history about the politics of the town hall and the council. So welcome and hello to Neil.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, colleagues, you'll see 5 recommendations set out for us in paragraph 3. You'll remember that in January of this year, we approved the basic structure of our grants programme, and then earlier this year, we approved £1 million worth of advice grants and £750,000 worth of our strategic grants to our core organisations. Here tonight, you've got 2 appendices laying out further grant making, and a third appendix, which is your equality impact assessment. Appendix 1 details how we are going to give 80k to 4 different organisations as part of our infrastructure grants programme, with a further 25k for training for those organisations and further development for them. Appendix 2 is a list of our 7 community chest project grants that we give out from our own voluntary and community sector grants programme. It also lists the organisations that are receiving 160k of project grants. And then we also, on behalf of Public Health and the Children's and Young People's Service, administer Healthier Hackney grants. So you've got details of £130,000 worth of Healthier Hackney grants, and the Children and Young People grants amount to 330,000. You've also got in both those two appendices the organisations that applied and were unfortunately unsuccessful, and the internal house management teams plus external partners who are part of the award process, which is a two-stage process. So there's a long listing and then a final shortlisting and decision-making process. The final thing you're being asked to approve tonight is in conjunction with the London boroughs of Tower Hamlets and Newham, we are proposing giving a £40,000 support package to the London Community Credit Union. Details of that are also in the paper, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Chair. Just to thank Councillor Kennedy for all his work alongside me and with officers and working with me to change how some of the money for children and young people is administered. So we had a two-stage lot, but on the second lot, what we found is the same providers were bidding for the paying pot of money, and then the smaller community groups that all of us know and are part of when we go out and spend weekends with them actually weren't able to get onto that commissioning framework. So I suggested we have a grant-based system, and officers will work tirelessly, and Councillor Kennedy oversaw all of that work with officers, and we now have these fantastic opportunities where those smaller groups that have that in-reach and trusted relationship with our communities are able to apply. Of course, Chair, there are outcomes and there's an expectation. We understand how that money is spent, but it's just easier access to the communities that do the work with our communities that we need. Thank you.
Great stuff. So with both those points, are we happy to agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thanks very much. Item 11, which is the main contractor for social housing decarbonisation funds, which is Councillor McKenzie's name, I assume is coming here because of deadlines and CPIC and everything else, because and the significance of the investment and the drawdown of the SHDF. But over to you, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. I'm delighted to present this report in regard to our efforts to reach net zero in terms of our council housing. I'd like to thank officers for all the work they put into putting together our bid to the Department of Housing in regard to the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. This will make a real difference to kind of 700 of our households across the borough in terms of actually apportioning money to retrofit their homes so people can actually hopefully live in warm, sustainable housing, and in terms of their contributions they'll have to the reductions of carbon emissions. So with that, I'd like to recommend members support this paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Chair. And very briefly, firstly, just to commend Councillor McKenzie on his work on the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. I think it illustrates really two things. The first is the journey that we've been on in regards to sort of helping decarbonise some of our estates and actually getting us to a point through the Environmental Sustainability Board, but also through the development of the Climate Action Plan, where we're bid ready to be able to be successful to help sure that we're helping some of our most vulnerable residents in need. And the second thing really, really feeding into sort of point that Councillor McKenzie made, which is helping support some of our most vulnerable residents. We know that we're living in a massive energy crisis right now, and actually improving those energy efficiency levels, whereas those residents won't have the resources to be able to do that. We're going to do that, and just to assure everyone, we're going to be continuing this work to further flesh out and actually be able to capitalise on further funding moving forward.
Echo both what Councillor McKenzie and Councillor Coburn, and it really clearly states this is our first significant step in retrofit, which is absolutely essential to the climate action plan and net zero. And I also just draw attention to the drawing down of that grant that officers so successfully bid for, the match funding, and how we will address leaseholders within this package as well. So it's an important direction of travel, and really thank all of the officers from across the council, but especially in housing services, that have put this together and what it means for the borough. Are we happy to agree the approach? I assume, as we can see in 3.4, that there will be engagement with both councillors Chapman, Coburn and McKenzie through the award of contract and the direction of travel, which is locked into recommendations, which is great. Are we happy to agree the report? Agreed. Fantastic. Thank you. So item 12 is the proposed alteration to change Our Lady Catholic School to co-educational from the 1st September 2024. It is Deputy Mayor Bramble's paper. One thing that I would say is the last time I remember being in this chamber discussing a single item like this, the whole of that public gallery was full of people from Haggerston School telling us not to support move to co-educational education. I think there's two things that I would say about why the public gallery is not full. Is one, the work that the school and the education team have done, which is referenced in here, to have that discussion within the school and its community. I think it's the journey that we've been on to improve all of our schools. So people are not seeing options closing, they're seeing options continuing to be there. And I suppose the third is, I think there's probably some recognition both in the faith school sector and more broadly, as you say in your introduction, of the real challenges around finance and pupil places. And that is why both the school leadership team and beyond have put this proposal to us this evening. But I'm very pleased that we don't face a delegation of parents or members of the community saying don't do this, because that's what we had in the mid-noughties. Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Chair. So just to pick up on a few of those points, Hackney schools have been on a transformational journey where we have gone from some of the worst schools in the country to now having some of the best. I always say we never got to say we are better than, because we were the worst. And it's really positive to see that we've gone from a borough that was, if we're honest, failing our children and young people, to now a borough that provides those opportunities that our children not just need, but absolutely deserve. And although we've spoken before about the challenges we've faced with falling roll numbers in primary schools, although it hasn't had such a detrimental impact on our secondary schools, they are not immune to this, and this is why we are here. And actually what you'll find with this paper is that you've got a head teacher that has looked at different ways to mitigate those falling numbers, but is being proactive. He's trying to make sure that he mitigates further risk of the school not being viable. There's been a huge consultation with the diocese, with the parents, with pupils, thinking about what that would look like. If the agreement goes ahead for it to become co-ed, it's going to be year 7, and then every intake over time will increase. So it won't be a dramatic change over time, that those boys coming in will still be the youngest. And also the sixth form is mixed, so it's a culture that people know and a perception that people know about the school. Anyway, they've thought about how they can still keep separate areas around changing rooms, toilets and dining to mitigate any concerns or risk or just queries that parents may have. They have done a lot of work alongside Hackney Education, and also appreciate the feedback that I've received from colleagues that we are this far. In an ideal world, if they didn't need to change, would they? Maybe not. But it's making sure within the parameters that we've got to secure the school system. Ultimately, when there are less children in the school, it just means less money for the schools. All of the things that we love, Trevor, and champion about our schools is dependent on the funding model that we have right now from central government. And when that is at risk, we have to make difficult decisions to ensure we safeguard and preserve all of our schools. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much indeed, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Are we content with the recommendations? Agreed. Thank you. And I think we're looking forward to visiting the school for their exam results day, which is great, and thank them for their work in the poverty and education report. So item 13, I think, was originally late and in a separate dispatch, but is the Cabinet response to the Task and Finish group on the council tax reduction scheme. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I start, of course, by thanking very much all of those councillors who were involved in the scrutiny commissions, and obviously the officers that support them. The report they produced was a long and thorough one, and you know, I think everyone, both the teams implementing the CTR's changes and the scrutiny side, learnt, and we were able to engage in that in a way that's been really helpful to all of us. In view of the time, I'll summarise the set of recommendations we've got there into 3 headings, really. They're essentially about support, about simplification, and about consultation. So in terms of support, I think one of the things you should know, of course, is that during the time of this, from when this scrutiny commission was set up to when it concluded, the Money Hub was set up and has become an essential part of the way we're providing support across the council. And although we've always provided we're proud of ourselves in the way we have tried to support residents through all this. I think we have, in search of continuous improvement, managed to make some changes for the better there. There's a number of recommendations in the report, some of which are around the voluntary sector as well, which we, of course, continue to work with. Again, one of the essential parts of the community in giving support to the residents who need it when dealing with all matters, really, but particularly in this case in terms of council tax. So around support, we welcome those recommendations. Simplification, some recommendations there about simplifications of documents going forward, which we will take on board. And again, actually, that Money Hub has been, if you remember, one of the essential reasons of setting up the Money Hub in the first place was to simplify the application process for people looking for support, financial support, particularly across the council, to minimise the number of forms and make it easier and more straightforward for them to do so. And we'll continue to work with them and with anyone else who could help, basically, to make things as simple and straightforward as possible. And the last thing's about consultation. I'm pleased to report we are, I think, the launch of the consultation to reduce the maximum contribution that working age council tax reduction scheme applicants will make towards the scheme from the current 15% to 10%, which we intend to implement by the next financial year. You could argue that's slightly ahead of our manifesto commitment, and we're launching the consultation on that very shortly. There's recommendations in there about how we should do that, particularly on the consultation, for instance, in using real life examples in demonstrating how it works, which we will take on board in doing that. So if I just finish again by thanking all those involved in this scrutiny exercise, which has been really helpful to everybody. Thank you. If I can commend the recommendation to the response to the Cabinet, and also ask us to note that we're about to begin the consultation on the new CTRS scheme.
Thanks very much, Councillor Chapman, and just echo huge thanks to Scrutiny for doing this piece of work, your leadership, and also officers for their response, but also, as you pointed out, we talked about it during the budget process, but one of the most significant investments we're going to be making and bringing forward our manifesto commitment by 2 years is that consultation. It goes live, it says here, on the 14th of August, will run until towards the end of September. So people that have been interested in this process, both in the voluntary sector, the advocacy sector around poverty, as well as ordinary residents, will be able to take part in that work, and we'll be well ahead of implementation at the start of the next financial year. And there's a lot of rich evidence in the report and our response to it. So are we happy to agree the Cabinet response and also look forward to that delivery on the more generous and targeted council tax reduction scheme.
Agreed.
Agreed. Fantastic. There were an exempt appendix to the OFP. Cabinet have read that and noted it in their formal decision, so I'm not going to exclude the press or public. There are no new items of exempt urgent business, so I draw the Cabinet meeting to a close, and obviously we'll be reconvening in an hour and a half's time for full council this evening in this room. Thank you.